Chapter 6. Reality Check. "What are we doing?" Lynn whispers, as the security operatives, Wheel and Jake, still strapped to a medical gurney. "This is immoral. We shouldn't be testing people against their will." "This is too important," Dr. Smith argues. "These few are paving the way for the future of all mankind." "What we're doing isn't just wrong. It's illegal." Dr. Smith walks away from Jake and towards Lynn. "This is not your judgment call to make. We are inducing true evolution." "I can't be a part of this," Lynn shouts. "Kill me if you have to, but I refuse to help you do this." Shesha quickly moves to Lynn's side, backhanding her into the nearest table and toppling both it and her over. His eyes glow yellow, and several scales begin to materialize on his cheeks. "No, don't kill her. She may still be needed if the parasite refuses to take to these new hosts," Dr. Smith shouts. "Then teach her to keep her mouth shut," Shesha growls, walking away. Dr. Smith kneels beside Lynn and grabs her by the chin forcefully to make her look into his eyes. "If you don't cooperate, not only will Khan have you killed, he'll make sure everyone you've ever known disappears. From your grandma to your first-grade teacher, he will slaughter each and every one of them." Lynn defiantly spits a mouthful of blood into his face. Dr. Smith stands up, taking off his glasses and removing a handkerchief from his jacket and wiping off the lenses. "How charming. Did you know that your cousin Lisa is currently a patient at the medical facility? Mr. Khan owns that too, you know. I would hate for your misplaced idealism to affect the care that she needs to get better. It would be a shame if she didn't pull through her current troubles." Dr. Smith instructs Lynn to administer the GX parasite to one of the other unconscious teenagers. After a few seconds of nothing, his body begins to convulse. "It's not going to take," Shesha says, agitated. "We've wasted a lot of precious resources setting up tonight's activities. Mr. Khan will not look kindly on this failure." "Patience," Dr. Smith says, holding his arm out. The teen's eyes glaze over, and he begins to foam at the mouth. "I told you, it's another reject," Shesha growls, grinding his teeth in anger. I don't understand. The serum we developed to administer GX should have worked this time." "Why was the parasite rejected again?" Deborah asks from above on the catwalk, with the other supervisors. "Try again on another," Dr. Smith says, sweating. Reluctantly, Lynn injects the parasite into another teen. This one too fails. "Dispose of the rejects with the others. We can't have them waking up," Hayanara orders. "Why? What happens then?" "What do you do with these so-called rejects?" Lynn asks. "The parasite bonds with its host in order to survive, yet it needs incredible amounts of energy to metabolize. If the bond is not perfectly symbiotic, GX will drain its hosts of their life energy and affect those organ functions. If this process continues, the body will shrivel up and die, and in the meantime they will become mindless creatures, controlled only by the parasite's instincts to self-preserve. GX will use the dying host to seek out a new victim to implant itself into. One parasite could theoretically drain hundreds before finding a suitable body without rejection." Dr. Smith removes his glasses and wipes his forehead. "This is why we must isolate all rejects until they pass the retreat stage." "You mean until they die?" Lynn asks with disgust. "Yes, but the rejects are also isolated for our own safety. Even as failures, the victims will temporarily gain enhanced strength, speed, and durability. All things we do not wish to encounter in a walking parasitic injection system. A symbiotic bond is much stronger, though. I have nothing to fear from them." Shesha smiles. "Only you weak normals are at risk." Jake's spirit awakens to find Yumura standing beside him. What happened? Jake asks, looking around to find they are both trapped within his subconscious. The large reptilian mutant defeated us both. I've attempted to regain control, yet, as of now, I have been unable. I believe the humans have injected us with a chemical to render me ineffective. A sedative? What are they trying to do? They infused those other teenagers with a strange green liquid. Their bodies did not take to what was contained within, and their minds were quickly destroyed. We need to find a way to escape this stinking lab and leave town for good. Nothing but trouble's come to us since we got here. At present, I cannot even open an eye. The sedatives, as you call them, are very powerful. If I gave you some of my energy, do you think you could overpower the chemicals? Yumura raises his eyes in suspicion. You would risk that? Do I have a choice? You're stronger than I am. If we don't escape, we'll be killed or worse. Yumura nods and holds his hands out, palms turned upwards. Jake places his own hands on top of Yumura's until a blue glow surrounds his form. The blue light transfers into Yumura, and the Sakari feels every pore energized by the human spirit. Now get us out of here, Jake's spirit says before fading back into dormancy. Jake's physical body becomes surrounded by a bright blue light as the Sakari Yumura opens his red eyes. Dr. Smith is in the process of leaning over to administer a syringe containing the GX parasite when Yumura grabs his wrists and breaks free of his restraints. "Help!" Dr. Smith screams. "He's broken free! The sedatives have already worn off!" Quickly transforming into Rapture, Shesha moves towards them, but Yumura hurls the scientists into his path to trip him up. "I believe you and I have matters left unfinished," Yumura says with a grin, as Rapture pushes Dr. Smith out of his way. "I have beaten your ass twice already. What's one more time?" Rapture says, extending his claws. Yumura feels a sharp pain in his neck, and his vision clouds as his mind becomes covered in a haze. He drops to his knees in disbelief and watches as Rapture reverts back to his human form. Yumura feels his body shutting down against his will. "When did Khan send for the two of you?" Shesha asks, as two former members of his security force stand behind Yumura. "I was told not to let you shoulder it all. Extra insurance or something," says the man codenamed Demolition. He wears all black tactical gear, adorned with spikes and chains. His hands are wrapped tightly with barbed wire, and a protective mask covers his face. Because of the nature of his immense power, his clothing is insulated with shock absorbers to lessen the recoil of repeated impacts. "That kid has tough skin. I had to stab him pretty hard to get the needle in." The other figure steps forward. Codenamed Scarab. He wears a triangular, locust-like helmet, and two metallic wings protrude from the back of his armor. Designed as a prototype of the virtual biosuit, Scarab's armor is unable to keep the parasite fully in check, and must still undergo transformations to use his power, like Rapture or Demolition. "If it weren't for my stun blasts, you'd never have gotten that opportunity," Scarab says, two metallic mandibles moving around his face to produce the robotic voice. He raises his hands arrogantly to brandish two large gauntlets that emit paralyzing pulses of concentrated energy. In small bursts, the pulses stun an enemy, but given enough power, they can be fatal. "Has Khan altered the timetable now that you're here?" Hayanaro asks. "He says that it's time to move forward and do whatever's necessary to advance the project," Demolition replies, "even if that means turning every living being in this town into a test subject." Jake again awakens within his mind, to find Yumura already stirred. The Sakari holds his neck in pain, feeling the effects done to their physical body earlier. "I take it that we failed," Jake says with a sigh. Yamura glances at him, but doesn't immediately reply. His face is battered and soaked in blood. We have been infected. The parasite is unable to take control because of me. Instead, sustaining itself on your cells. A pulsating, tumor-like creature, with dozens of violently whipping tendrils, slithers towards Yamura from the shadows, and Jake cringes in terror. Leaping back into battle, Yamura screams and runs at the invading mass. You can be free of him forever, a voice whispers to Jake. He pauses, seeing no one else but Yamura, who is occupied dodging the parasite's flailing tentacles. You're capable of speech? Jake asks, wondering how the parasite is able to communicate with him, while simultaneously fending off Yamura's vicious assault. I can speak directly into your thoughts. You know that Yamura is more dangerous than I am. You and I could be true partners. A perfect symbiosis. Yamura still seeks only to completely control your body and destroy whatever remains of Jake Stewart. And what do you want? No one ever does anything for free, not even monsters. I want to live, the parasite says. We are unable to survive on our own without a host for more than a handful of seconds. We must feed off the nutrients of a host's bloodstream. We have no other means of sustenance. Your kind has already destroyed many people by transforming them into those reptilian monsters. That is an unfortunate side effect of the bonding process. Not all beings are compatible with our union. When the mind comes in contact with the parasite and resists its influence, the organism uses a special neurotoxin that allows it to show the potential host projected images in an attempt to lighten their resistance. Yamura stands on a pile of corpses. Sweat glistens from his bare chest, and blood drips from his claws. Among the dead are Grand General Hui and Kiru, Danny Livingston, Rusty, and Gator Rigsby, Yamura's own sister Inyana and her husband Marduk, Amy Cross, and even Jake Stewart himself. You are a clever creature, showing me what you believe me to desire, Yamura says, ignoring the vision. This shall come to pass, but not through the intervention of some insect. I shall conquer my enemies alone. No one else shall have that satisfaction. The parasite shows Yamura separating from Jake and regaining his true Sakari form. That is an impossibility. You do not have the power to restore that which was lost to me 10,000 years ago. My body has long died, wasting to nothing within that dark void of imprisonment. Yamura's body is projected into his mind, is still floating intact within the dimensional void. More images of beetles desiccating flesh and corpses putrefying into black stains flash before the sight of his intact body again. Interesting. You say that within the void there is no decay? Yamura questions. I assumed such a process was a universal constant. The parasite pulls up the words it needs from Yamura's own memories, communicating with him directly into his thoughts. Not all things must die, the parasite says, using word forms. I do not agree with that philosophy. Death is the closest thing to a deity that I have ever acknowledged. To know such forces exist in all their fullest, one must believe in the mortality of all other beings. Gods cannot die, the parasite says, again projecting the words to Yamura from his own memory. To believe that one must accept the existence of gods is a truth. Like I said, death is the only higher power that I accept. The parasite shows Yamura atop a throne of skulls. A golden crown rests between his crimson horns. Flattery, Yamura chuckles. Even such a primitive creature such as you has adapted the concept. You cannot make me a king. Yamura can feel the parasite's growing anger and frustration echoing through his head. The creature's frustration expresses as a loud buzzing, like a swarm of bees. The buzzing rouses Jake's avatar out of his own conversation with the organism. "What's that terrible sound?" Jake asks. "Our uninvited guest is having a tantrum," Yamura replies. Jake catches a hint of amusement in the Sakari's voice. It appears that the creature responsible for enhancing the mutations in Khan's employees has attempted its own infiltration of our psyche. The filth believes that it can gain our cooperation and ultimately our submission through flattery and illusion. Only a simple fool could be tricked by such pathetic tactics. Jake feels shame in himself, having contemplated what the parasite had to say. In truth, how could the organism be any worse than Yamura? It is a parasitic life form that attaches itself to a host and leeches from their blood its food. There can be no greater example of disgusting dependency. Once the creature attaches to the brain and central nervous system, it produces enzymes to spur the production of cellular energy, which bypasses natural limiters. Other hormones secreted likely produce the mutations we have seen. The parasite sees the futility in continuing to try and convince Yamura of its usefulness, and focuses entirely on Jake. It sees the human as its only remaining pathway to successful bonding. Jake's mind is filled with vivid pictures of himself carefree and happy. He runs and laughs with his cousins, aunts, uncles, and even his parents. The terror of Yamura is gone, and the world as he knows it is in peace. What is this?" Jake whispers, trying to shake off the hallucination. The creature tries to entice its victims to make you give it control. Do not be fooled by its subtle pitch of a better life. It sells only slavery, Yamura cautions, still battling the whirling tentacles. "The demon needs you to survive just as I do," the parasite flashes the words into Jake's thoughts. "I do not hide that fact, yet the demon will not admit it. While it still needs you, you do not need it. Cast him aside and regain your former life." "Alright, the cancer jellyfish does have a point," Jake says, looking over at Yamura. The Sakari hisses and turns back to his battle. "How would you go about removing him? Your tentacles magic or something?" "The demon can be pushed out, like a stinger, if every cell in your body cooperates in rejecting him at once. With my cells integrated into your own, I could expel him in his entirety." Jake nods. "Well, that's good to know. Now about this whole mutating into a lizard thing. The mutation is merely a side effect of our presence. The blood of all previous hosts still courses through our collective memory. Ancestral memories are shared and passed on to all." "Okay, gross," Jake says, pausing. "I don't particularly like the idea of sharing in your mutant STDs from previous partner species. Your attempts at humor are an attempt to alleviate your indecision. You're not committed to Yamura. He is not your friend. He is not your ally. You owe him no loyalty. The gifts we bestow are limitless. Empires have been decided on less power than that which I offer you." "The blood of previous hosts," Jake muses, his thoughts catching on something. "So what creepy slee-stack creature were you previously bonded to before that you kept giving people flare-ups of reptilian herpes?" "The Anostra were a proud and powerful race that should be treated with respect, not mocked by the likes of you." "Seems your collective is still smitten by those lizards," Jake laughs. "The Anostra went extinct because of us. We have learned from our past mistakes, and carry that pain with us forever. We must never forget what can happen if we fail to maintain a symbiosis with our host species. Each generation must bear the memory of that failure." Jake is surprised that the parasite's opening up to him. He suspects that this is still some kind of trick to lower his guard, and remains alert. Drunken on our power, the Anostra waged countless wars. No longer did they focus on reproduction or society. Death and destruction became their only mates. The last of them died off shortly, before a piece of our collective landed in this world in the vessel of an Ayurveda named Kerala. Whoa, hold up, Jake shouts. Stop the Roswell train. Don't try and tell me you're a freaking alien. Technically, I too am an alien to your world, Yumura sighs. You humans and your small minds. La 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 la, Jake mutters, covering his ears. I've already put up with accepting the existence of demons, angels, and magic in the past month. Aliens is just too much. Our bonding would open you up to all of the wisdom we have gained from hundreds of civilizations across the universe. Millions of years of innovation and knowledge can be at your disposal. The bonding would be completely symbiotic. You would gain as many benefits as I would. Enhanced strength, speed, stamina, durability, intelligence, healing. These would come at the cost of what? A few morphological changes? Humans are born with genetic defects each day. Would you shun a human child born with a cleft chin, as you would a human with one of my kind inhabiting them? You already possess a true parasite. What does Yumura offer you but pain and mistrust? Jake recalls all the horrible things that Yumura has done. The murders of police officers, the unsuspecting Rockland civilians, weighs heavily on his conscience. Compared to all of that, what has the GX parasite really done that he's seen? If it requires convincing him to submit, can the creature truly be blamed for every evil deed its host commits? Is it not possible that the actions done by these mutants is not due to the parasite, but only the heightened, destructive power of it? Fool! Gain control of yourself, Yumura shouts, slashing through a tentacle that is sharpened into a knife-like edge. Jake looks down to see that several of the tentacles have already encircled his legs and waist. Bad touch, Jake shouts, removing himself quickly from the barbed appendages. It got into my mind and nearly had me convinced to say yes. This thing is really good with its sales pitch. Yumura throws his arms out, consuming the parasite in the black flames of his energy. The creature's body begins to boil as it burns, and its scream rises into a deafening buzz that forces Jake to his knees. Your weakness nearly allowed that beast to overtake us. Should you continue to possess such a lack of will, I shall remain in control permanently, Yumura growls. Jake watches in sadness as the parasite dies. A small feeling of pity fills him. The creature was no more evil than an insect or a bacterium. It merely wanted to survive, to belong. Unable to live on its own, rejection equals death in the parasite's world. He feels sorry for the creature that was unable to find acceptance in life. Our captors will likely assume their pet has succeeded in subverting our will. We must use this false assumption to our advantage. Yumura begins barking orders, and Jake is amazed at how well composed the Sakari remains, despite the circumstances he is currently faced with. He wonders if the correct choice was made, or should he have submitted to the parasite to be rid of Yumura once and for all. With it too late to go back and find out, he is left with only one option ahead of him. To survive, he and Yumura must work together. Ring, 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 buzzing with urgency. Brian's alarm clock dances across his dresser before falling to the floor with a thud. Brian groans, annoyed each time he is awakened by the loud ringing of his alarm. Many days he is able to awaken on his own naturally, removing much of the annoyance of the morning. For some reason today, not only did Brian fail to rouse from his sleep on his own, he actually feels more tired than when he went to bed, not recalling any vivid dreams or other phenomena that would affect his rest. Brian wonders what else could have impacted his slumber so greatly. The stress of high school and dealing with bullies likely played a significant factor, but he's not completely sure. Getting out of bed, Brian pulls on a clean t-shirt and a pair of jeans before going to the restroom and brushing his teeth. Upon exiting the lavatory, Brian becomes bothered by the quiet. Most days, Deborah Root is off to work many hours before Brian ever awakens, but his father still has occasionally been around to chit-chat with and share a few minutes of breakfast. Dad? Brian asks, stepping out into the hallway. Are you still here? He moves aside the blinds to peer outside. Seeing that both of his parents' cars are currently gone, he turns, catching sight of the microwave's digital clock from the kitchen. 8:03 a.m. Crap! Brian thinks, running back to his room to put on his socks and shoes. School's already started and I haven't even left the house. Finished dressing, Brian grabs a Pop-Tart from the pantry and a $5 bill from the cup beside the door where his parents hang their car keys. Rushing out the door, Brian tears open the shining silver paper and devours the sprinkle-covered pastries in seconds. He runs down the streets, trying to make as good a time as he can to the school without getting tired and becoming covered in sweat. By 8:55, Brian reaches the school only a few minutes before the first class of the day is released. Not so fast, young man, says Mr. Belchik, the truant officer. Why are you so late? He asks, narrowing his gaze to the point. I overslept, sir. It won't happen again. The man nods, allowing Brian to hurry off to Coach E's class. Upon crossing the classroom's threshold, the gauntlet begins. Mr. Root has finally decided to grace us with his presence. Outstanding, Coach E says sarcastically. Now we're only down to 6 absences. They're probably just skipping, says Mary Belmont, a senior who is forced to retake the class after a glitch in her records allowed her to skip taking it until now. She is frustrated at having to take the underclassmen's science class, as it all is preventing her from her early graduation. If it were me, I'd be getting lit, Tiny Sterling laughs, putting his thumb and index finger up to his mouth to mock a marijuana cigarette. Brian looks around, feeling unease at all the empty seats. There is no way all these people are just skipping. Something's really wrong with this town right now. In the school's parking lot, a black van owned by the Conco Special Operations Force arrives. A group of 7 operatives, dressed all in black combat gear, complete with face masks, emerge, led by a man codenamed Raven. An 8th member, codenamed Sludge, stays behind in the van as the driver for a quick exit. This is for real, no more drills. We move efficiently and bag as many kids as we can and then split. Teenagers have been determined by the suits to be the ideal candidates for the program. And I'm not educated enough in the science to argue. So we do what they say. No one takes any unnecessary risks. Kill any would-be heroes, Raven says to his team, dubbed the crew by the other operatives. One of the men, larger than the others and having a gold ring through his nose, speaks up. Why here? Bull asks. I mean, couldn't we have run home infiltrations easier? Dr. Smith is also in need of some supplies that are no longer readily available. He needs a reagent called VX280 aminolox. The old fossil science teachers are sometimes known to still have some in their storerooms from back before it was banned for being a potential carcinogen. We snatch and grab as many volunteers as we can, take all the reagent we can carry, and bail, in and out. The crew moves into the building and immediately are met by Mr. Belchik. Disable and remove if possible, but avoid killing. We may need more volunteers in the future, Raven orders. A swift form maneuvers behind the truant officer and locks him into a half-Nelson hold, covering his mouth from screaming with his other hand. The operative activates his parasite, emitting a euphoric sensation into the air that calms the man and lowers him into a deep slumber. Clear, Nirvana says, dragging the man by the shoulders into a closet and closing him in. In the hallways, the crew encounters a few teens out of class, headed for various places such as the nurse's station and the administrative building. The teens are subdued with ease and loaded into the van by Bull, while the rest of the team moves further in, following a diagram showing which classrooms belong to the science department. Keep it moving, guys. All we need is a wise guy to spot us and hit the fire alarm before we can silence him, Raven orders. Reach Coach E's classroom and stop to last-minute strategize. This is the head of the science department. If the reagent is to be found, it'll be in here, Raven says, pointing to the door. No slips. We all go in, we all come out. Understood? The team nods, and on Raven's command, they kick the door open and rush in, 2 operatives taking each side of the room, and Raven and one other taking the center. As the teacher and his students rise in panic, an operative named Darkhold triggered his parasite to activate, metabolizing to boost his strength. Cracking his neck and large knuckles, his biceps bulge, and he lifts the desk, throwing it and striking Coach E in the chest. The teacher is propelled into the blackboard, which shatters and the man collapses to the floor, out cold and bleeding from his mouth and nose. Subtle, Raven sighs, to which Darkhold merely shrugs. Bull returns to the team, blocking the doorway with his hulking frame to prevent any teens from escaping. 2 students run towards the room's only windows. Raven expands his awareness and triggers his parasite to react. His shadow extends out across the floor and consumes the windows in an impenetrable darkness. Do not attempt to flee or fight us. A calm head is your only survivable course of action. Should any of you fall within my shadow's embrace, your mind will be destroyed, Raven cautions. Tiny stands up from his seat defiantly and charges the operative nearest him, codenamed Sting, with a powerful spear tackle, with all of his weight behind it. Sting skids back but doesn't fall, instead touching his index finger to the large teen's neck. 1,000 tiny stings of venomous poison course through Tiny's bloodstream, and he screams in agony. Brian slides down in his seat and ducks behind Coach E's desk, where he can't be seen. From his vantage point, he sees another figure move out from behind the large man named Bull. The newest figure seems about his own age, but built with much more lean muscle and taller. The new figure moves with such silence that none of the crew even notice him. Start rounding the class up. Darkhold, go into the storage room and find that reagent, Raven orders. Darkhold walks past Brian into the storage room, and several electrical sparks leap out from the darkness before the GX warrior collapses to the floor. Someone else is in here with us, Sting shouts. I caught a flicker of movement just before Darkhold went down. Whoever is hiding back there is dead, the man, codenamed Scorp, growls, activating his parasite until a long and hooked tail bursts from his back. His teeth elongate into fangs, and his skin gains several patches of pale greenish-colored scales. As Scorp darts into the storeroom to attack, a small, dancing flame appears on one of the shelves before erupting into a massive explosion that propels him across the room. There's no one here. It's like it's a fucking ghost, Bull growls, looking around but seeing no one but scared teenagers and the 4 operatives remaining on their feet. Sting raises both of his arms towards the storeroom and fires a rapid succession of venomous stingers into the flames in his frustration. Sir? He asks, trying not to panic. When he doesn't receive a reply right away, he shouts, Raven! Find him, Raven orders Nirvana. His mask painted with yin and yang. Nirvana is the only operative to not have to rely on emotional stimulation to activate his parasite. Aware of all emotion in the room, he senses much fear. He tries to examine each being's mental state, lightly brushing their awareness with his own. I sense only fear, even from you, Nirvana says, to which Raven scowls. He suddenly senses a brief sensation of intense hatred. The being remains in constant motion, too fast for him to locate specifically. He's definitely here, but he's staying mobile, so we can't pin him down. Sting, Bull, head for the van with whatever volunteers you've disabled. We'll cover you, Raven orders. Bull screams out in pain as he is jolted by a surge of electricity through the floor. Raven looks down to find a black scorch mark traveling all the way across the room. Bull drops to his face, smoke rolling off his bulky body. Brian grabs a book off Coach E's desk and hurls it at Raven, catching him in the back of the thigh. He pivots, spooked. Don't come near me, Raven screams, I'll envelop this entire room in shadow and melt the brains of every fucking kid in here. Police officers from Barrington rush into the room with weapons drawn. Raven turns to cloak them in his shadow. He too is hit by a surge of electricity and downed. Before the police can stop him, Rick leaps through a window and escapes, leaving only the crew to be taken into custody. Once safely away from the excitement, Rick leans against a tree and smiles with satisfaction. Having won his first battle against Khan, he has not only taken several of his strongest pieces off the board, he has brought in out-of-town authorities in order to avoid potential local corruption. Seeing the police arrive, Sludge quickly speeds out of the parking lot, plowing through several security fences. 2 police cruisers following him in pursuit, but with a few phone calls he's able to lose them when a Conco delivery semi blocks the road at an intersection. Antonio Khan arrives at the facility outside of town in his limousine. He rolls down the window and lights a cigar as Shesha and Hayanaro approach. I need a status report. I do not trust our phone lines to be secure after the breaches in security last night. All of the subjects we regained last night were rejects, Hayanaro explains. What of the other one, the Sakari? His body is still resisting either way. Dr. Smith thinks it has something to do with his species' own resilience. Break him, Khan says, taking a long draw from his cigar. We must know how a demon holds against the parasite. If Enyana turns out to become a greater threat to us than Yamura, we need to be sure that we can deal with her. And if he too becomes a reject, dispose of them all, Smith included. There's no reason to continue funding one who cannot provide me with desirable results. Sir, there's one other thing, Chessa says, trying not to make eye contact in shame. What? Khan asks, annoyed. Raven and the crew have all been arrested and taken to the Barrington County Jail in Medina. Only Sludge was able to escape with 11 volunteers. Reward Operative Sludge for his success. And the others? You will take Special Operative Peril and break them out of that jail. Not allow them to reveal precious company secrets to the authorities. Least of all, those that are not on my payroll. Damn it. This is going to delay our plans considerably. The school will postpone the game, and the town will be less likely to organize it out of fear and paranoia. Special Operative Peril? Shesha asks, unable to mask his surprise. He has never heard of this operative before, and he has been in the room for the birth of all of Khan's GX warriors. Director Castile has managed to have some success at the Chicago Research Facility. His alternative methods have added 4 new warriors to our family, while you have been busy down here losing operatives left and right, he replies, referring to the deaths of Fission and Breeze. From the other side of the limo, a young boy, no older than 10, emerges. I've scanned the area as you've requested. No one is listening, Peril says. His voice is cold and emotionless. So unlike any child Shesha has ever heard speak before. I didn't even sense the boy, Shesha thinks. Who is he? I'm Peril, and you don't listen very well, the boy's voice says, invading Shesha's mind. A cold chill runs through Shesha. He's a telepath,